Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay in the back? Are we good? Okay, awesome. Well, I'm Zara. I'm here with Ryan, and we're here to talk to you about OSINT, threat intelligence, AI, digital agents. So before we get too into it, I wanted to ask all of you, how many of you have used OSINT in the last year? Okay, I don't believe that because we've all used Google search, so probably all of you. How many of you have integrated AI into your workflows in some way in the last year? Okay, cool, a little bit. How many of you are a little bit skeptical about how many people are trying to force you to use AI in your workflows in the last year? Cool, awesome, perfect. So yeah, that's what we want to talk to you today about is our experience using AI agents or agentic workflows for OSINT. So today I'm going to talk to you on the OSINT side about, what is it, why we find it useful for threat intelligence, why we find it very painful or not useful in many ways, do some case studies of where we've seen it in the wild in our work, but also citing a lot of other awesome security researchers in their work, talking about why we thought AI and agents and OSINT went together, and then Ryan will take over and show you some cool demos of real agents and talk about how they work and how we're building them. So, all right, to get started, OSINT and threat intelligence. So why threat intelligence? I feel like this is all we need to know. I feel like usually in blue team work, we spend a lot of time thinking about our systems. So what do we build, defending in depth, secure by design? But the point of threat intelligence is that you want to know very deeply how the adversaries are hacking you. And so it's just understanding them in the wild. OSINT has a fun way to do this. So what is OSINT? It's a jargony word just to mean for publicly available data. And it means kind of everything that surrounds us. So things like on the web, like Google search, things on social media, things on the dark web or closed communities, like some of these criminal Telegram channels, and also some weirder sources, like you think about satellite data or trade data. All of it is considered OSINT. Basically everything that's outside your corporate network. Where is it really cool? So some of the reasons I think it's cool is one, it gives you early indicators. So if you think about everything that ends up in the news, sort of definitionally, there's someone out there who's talking about what it ends up in the news. So sometimes this can be security researchers talking on InfoSec Exchange or security Twitter about a vulnerability. In other cases, this is a local news picking up some natural disaster that impacts trade data. So there's some really early indicators that are out there. Another way I think it's really interesting is it kind of gives you this full picture or this common operating picture of a threat actor, a vulnerability, malware, because there's so many perspectives. You think about social media perspectives versus blogs versus social media in other countries. It gives you a kind of a 360-degree view of what is this threat actor, what are they up to? And what this means for a security organization is you get lead time on mitigation. So you get sometimes a couple days or maybe weeks if you're lucky head notice on something that's evolving so you can do something about it before it makes it to your organization. Okay, so those can sound great, but what's the problem with OSINT? First of all, there's a credibility question. So if you look at this breach forums example, just because someone is talking about you on breach forums, it's probably not real. So that's the big thing is if you see something on Twitter or if you see something on someone who's posting a breach about your company, your first question is is this even real at all? Who is the person that's posting it? Do they have a track record of successfully posting leaked data in the past or successfully posting about real incidents? Or are they some new user who's just scamming other people on scam forums? The next question is noise. So we just said that OSINT is every piece of data in the world. So great. But what's the parts that you care about? So you think about things I just threw some screenshots in here, but there's the CVE feed. So there's all the CVEs that you have to care about. And then you think about every security blog about some threat actor doing something. And we always talk about in threat intelligence, people love to talk about the big ones. So busting panda and cozy bears, but does that even matter for your company? In many cases, no. And then the other kind of feed of data is also things like security Twitter or social media. And so there's a huge noise problem if there's a few pieces of relevant data out there, but you're digging through hundreds of thousands or millions of things to find that, the return on investment isn't always great. And then the third question is actionability. So here we're going into fraud Telegram, and you see if you're on Telegram, almost anywhere in Telegram with the hot takes, there's bad stuff that you'll find. But then the question is can you do anything about it? And if you can't do anything about it, if you can't take it down or enforce or inform your security posture, then aside from personal interest, there's not really a reason to look at it. And so that's one of the other challenges is can you turn it into a hard signature or something to take down or do something with the data? All right, so now transitioning into OSINT in the wild. I want to talk, I think I will go lightly here. I'm not a scattered spider expert, and I'm sure that some of you are, so I'll tread carefully here. But I want to talk about the scattered spider and the Tyler Buchanan doxing. So for those who aren't familiar, scattered spider is part of a group called the COM. It's generally like younger cyber fraud criminals, like in the ages of 18 to 22. They often focus on things like SIM swapping. And notably for us, they messed up our hacker conference in DEF CON. So if you look at the timeline of events, these screenshots are about Caesar's Palace pulling the contract with DEF CON in Vegas. I'm not sure how many of you were also at DEF CON this year. But this timeline of this incident was basically Scattered Spiders, which is this group, they do social engineering, SIM swapping, stuff like that. They launched a social engineering attack on the casinos in August of last year. They successfully got into the systems. They did not plug USB devices into TVs, as the hotels in Vegas seem to think. But they did get their way into the systems, and then they were able to partner with AlphaV, and they used ransomware to able to successfully shut down operations completely for Caesar's Palace and MGM Grand. And it was a tragedy for these companies. They were completely out of operations. They had people running up to hotel rooms to physically see if they were occupied, and losing millions of dollars a day. And I think Caesar's Palace actually paid the ransom. So it was a really big issue. The hotels were completely shut down. And then time goes on. We're in January now. A small cyber threat, or a small part of Scattered Spider, Noah Urban, was arrested in Florida. He was a part of a SIM swapping game. And part of the reason he was arrested because he was involved in violence as a service, he was a victim of violence as a service operations from another SIM swapping gang. And so his data was sort of in a hospital system. But that's a whole story. Then Caesar's Palace drops DEF CON, and then Tyler Buchanan is arrested. So there's a lot that went on behind the arrest, and I'm told law enforcement also was tracking this before. But one of the notable things about this arrest was that he was doxxed. So someone on Pastebin, a rival person, posted his information, meaning that not only you could tie his identity to his fraud channels as a threat researcher or as a law enforcement agency, but also any other person who was mad at him, including these violence as a service rival SIM swapping gangs, could then go and compromise his identity. So this is one example of, it's kind of a trend is sometimes these criminals will dox each other, and then sometimes there's other ways, other more exotic ways of finding information of them through leaked data, leaked passwords and stuff like that. If I extend this example a little bit more, you see that when you see talked about Scattered Spider in the news, you see he talks about his involvement with the SIM swapping gang, the violence as a service operation, and you see that there's this tie of not only between the SIM swapping gangs to the more sophisticated ransomware attacks to some of these more physical real world harms, which I think is always interesting for me as you think about digital space. It's very sanitized, we're just involved in cyber warfare, but it does have these physical and real world implications. All right, so extending this example a little bit more, you see that this is kind of the ecosystem of this incident, and some of the overlaps between things like Scattered Spider, to their partnership with AlphaV, to the different victims that they've had, to the other side of the service operations, and the overlaps between the two victims. So this is just a fun graph, but mostly the point that I think is here is that the overlaps between different entities in the cyber ecosystem is very fuzzy. And so sometimes you see a more sophisticated with less sophisticated across different platforms, but it's tracing these relationships, often learning about one thing can help you find something more exotic. So now we get into fraud. And I want to talk about fraud because, it's something that we look at a lot because there's just so much chatter about it. You see something like this. This is everywhere on Telegram. You can find a stolen account. So this is someone advertising a stolen account. And the problem these people have is that because they're anonymous, they scam each other. No one trusts them. And so they have to provide some credibility that they actually know what they're talking about if you're selling a stolen account. And so here they're saying here's an example of our stolen account. And this is in a traditional, a fraud method, stolen account type channel. If we show a little bit more exotic, another thing is these, we go into an example of a SIM swap. And so here you see that they're talking about they can do the walk and get you access to someone's account via SIM swap. And the point I just wanted to make here, this was a very recent post. This was August 19th. This is from Star Fraud Chat, which is the example that we just talked about was Star Fraud is another name for Scattered Spider. And this is very easy to find. You can find it on Google. And so there's this kind of overlap between this and the more ransomware stuff. Getting into some other examples of OSINT in the wild. So this is another thing is like there's some interesting stuff with vulnerabilities. There's a lot of really cool papers published about this, but like Follow the Bluebird is one of our favorites. But when you look at vulnerabilities, NVD is like the classic place to start. It's enriched, it's processed, they have analysts looking at it, and they can match it to like victim software. Twitter is another OSINT place to look. It's often, like you can see in this paper, and so a couple other people have measured it, you see this 2 to 3 day lead time from Twitter to and process NVD samples, and so it can give you a heads up. But then the classic question is, if you're acting on something, do you really want to tell your boss or your team that I'm doing this because I saw this on Twitter? And so there's kind of this actionability and reliability question with some of the Twitter data, but it can provide this really cool leading indicator. Another one is the breaches, like we talked about, things like the hacker forums. They talk a lot about breach data, and so you can learn about things like your stolen credentials. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. And then like NAS API, the NPM breach. And then one of the fun ones we wanted to get into, and this leads more into Ryan's cool agents that he's going to show you, is IOCs and TTPs. When we look at like things like understanding threat actors, so much of it is in these cool like security blogs where people will go into the details of talk about the entire like attack chain. And sometimes they also see people sharing like more of these tactical indicators, either in the security blogs. I think this is a little bit small, but you can see IOCs here. You can also see phishing URLs from the CrowdStrike blue screen of death incident of people sharing them, trying to like tell other people these are scam URLs. You also see things like crypto wallets. So like for things like rug pull scams, you see people sharing a lot of these in the wild. And I think this is a really interesting space where sometimes this crowdsourced knowledge can provide a lot of interesting intelligence in addition to more traditional indicator feeds. So with that, I'm jumping into what does OSINT have to do with agents, and where can agents help OSINT? And so we've tried a bunch of these different ways, and we think that they help in a lot of these spaces. One is data collection. So with agentic workflows, things that can make these small decisions, they can expand to collections, and they can allow you to collect from more spaces and more illicit spaces. So you can think about like traditional spidering or scraping, they can do a smarter version of that. The next is finding relevant data. So helping with that like needle in the haystack problem, can they go search on your behalf to find what you care about? The third, which is one of the demos, so this is more exciting, they can do research and look into this event and dig deeper to see if there's anything actionable that you can do something with. The fourth is summarizing reporting in real time. That's another demo, so keep an eye out. And then the fifth is like doing things like integrating your workstream with other tools that you might have. So if you know that after you find an IP, you want to put it into VirusTotal, digital agents can help with that type of problem. And with that, I will hand it over to Ryan.
So my first question is, what exactly are agentic systems? It's a relatively new technology, probably been around about 2 years now. So if you ask 10 different people, you probably get 10 different answers. This is kind of the way that what I consider to be agentic systems. It's a software program that to some degree mimics reasoning. I don't want to go as far as say as it does do reasoning, but it does something akin to mimicking reasoning. It's able to perform tasks autonomously in its environment, utilizing kind of a predefined set of tools, and allows you to carry out certain varying goals depending on your needs. They're used for a number of different things. There's been a number of different papers out there detailing what agents can be used for. Some most common are writing detailed reports, scientific research, even things such as creating new metallic alloys for material science purposes, and even red teaming or hacking. It was just recently a paper talking about how these agents were designed to do web application pen testing. So you have like a cross-site scripting agent, an SQLi agent, all to do this web penetration pen testing, and even hacking or vulnerability assessments in source code. So I'd talk a little bit about design patterns. There's 4 key components for developing these kind of systems. The first are the prompting strategies. The 3 most common that you'll see in the wild are most commonly used are React, Reflection, and language agent tree search. Basically, all of these strategies boil down to basically 3 different things. You observe, act, and evaluate. And these prompting strategies basically are lesser or greater sophistications of those actions. The second component is tool use. You want to equip these agents with as many tools as possible. These tools basically allow you to interface with your data sets. So you have a tool that's basically designed for SQL queries. You can interact with your database. Web queries. There's a fantastic free tool out there called Tavily. that allows you to supply it with a search query, and it'll return to you a few snippets from the web in reference to that query, along with the sources and even like follow-up questions. You can delve deeper into the research topic. We have tools to execute code, even tools that will send email for you or Slack messages. The third component is planning. You want these agents to be able to break down a fairly generic task into subtasks. And the fourth is administrative agents. Rather than have one general agent, oftentimes we'll develop more specialized agents that can handle very obscure tasks and use more tools that are developed for very certain use cases. There's definitely a lot of pros and cons to using these systems. The pros are increased speed to insight. If you're requiring vast volumes of data, these agents can help out a lot with distilling that data down to key insights. They can automate time-consuming workloads. If you have a general workflow that you do every day, it takes like 1 or 2 hours. You can download that workflow into an agent. It can help you kind of achieve your task a little quicker. Also, with creative problem solving, there's a new research into this human-in-the-loop technique where you utilize an agent to give feedback on certain tasks. And there's definitely a number of cons. High cost is one of them. If you don't have your own model and your own infrastructure, you're making calls out to another LLM. Running complex tasks can take hundreds and not thousands of different calls to these LLMs to complete them. Hallucinations. Most people are probably familiar with this one, but it is a problem where a lot of the outputs aren't grounded in ground truth. Task confusion is another one. We'll give it a task, say like, give me all the IOCs or TTPs for the black suit ransomware, and return to you the histories of men's black suits, or a cactus ransomware as well. We'll return to you something like sonoran cactuses in Arizona. So it does get confused a little bit. There's also new research that came out recently talking about how like assigning a model a role isn't really effective for these newer models. So grounding it in some role as a computer security expert doesn't actually have any effect on the outcomes of the model. And these models tend to overgeneralize. A lot of times these agents will spit out very kind of tepid results that aren't really too many details and aren't probably valuable for your use case. So I'd like to show you all 2 demos. The first demo is a research reporting agent. This is based off an open source project you can find on GitHub called GPT Researcher. It's pretty has a fantastic UI, and it's really easy to kind of modify the backend for your own agent. You can see here on the right in the diagram, basically you give this agent a task. It'll then create a plan based off of that task. It'll break down the initial task into different subtasks, and it'll hand it off to the researcher. The researcher will then generate different search queries based off of those unique tasks. It'll then utilize different tools to complete those queries and those different tasks, aggregate them all together, send it off to another publisher agent, which will then generate a final report for you. There's a number of different types of reporting agents out there. Another popular one is called Storm, which is able to generate like Wikipedia-style articles for you from a very generic request. This is the GPT Researcher in action. Basically, I supplied a task to find me information on the cactus ransomware group. The UI is all the GPT Researcher. The backend is an agent more tailored to compiling reports on these different threat actors. You see here it's breaking down the initial requests in different tasks and different topics for the report, and utilizing very specific tools for that topic. These kind of specialized agents are a little bit better for crafting reports when you want like very detailed, very specific information in those reports rather than more generic information for a certain threat actor. You can see here's compiling the report. It's streaming to you. You can see there's quite a bit of information here. You can see some really detailed IOCs, TTPs being spit out by the agent itself. Some things like IOCs, very specific IOCs like registry keys being used, regex, mutexes, things of that nature. It's a little bit better for those use cases. You can see here it's pretty detailed. want to show you a quick diagram, like what a specialized agent kind of looks like. A little bit different than the GPT research style, where they have like more general agent to do more general tasks. Two kind of key differences here. Once you supply the task, you want a agent that will pull down a very specific kind of outline to help guide it in its research process. This is really important for kind of requiring the agent to come back with certain information that you find useful. So I would recommend to like utilize the people within your organization, specialized skill sets, to help you kind of craft these outlines, to help guide these agents in the research process. The next thing you probably want to do is grab kind of some task context to help it guide it in its research so it doesn't go off topic, go off the rails, give you random tidbits of information that aren't relevant to the initial request. It's going to break down those topics in the outline, create in search queries, depending on how many you specified. And then for each research query is going to utilize a very specific tool to retrieve information for that query itself. And then it's going to come back and it's going to pass it off to a publishing agent, which will then create a drafted final report for you. This is probably my favorite agent. Talk about the Web Voyager agent. It's based off a paper called Web Voyager, which they create an agent that interacts with the browser in real time using, I think they use Playwright. That's what I use as well. It allows them to do like give me a very simple task. The agent, very simple task, like book me at this restaurant and it'll go out and do it for you. LangChain is a fantastic repo on GitHub. There's a lot of different notebooks out there that you can utilize for these different types of agents. And Web Voyager is one of them. It's pretty easy to modify and create your own. It uses a technique called set of marks prompting. So you'll take a screenshot of the browser itself. It'll inject JavaScript into the browser. The JavaScript will then create bounding boxes around certain elements within the browser that are actionable. So like buttons, hyperlinks, lists, things of that nature. And then it'll create bounding boxes accompanied by a number, 1 through n. And then it'll pass off that image to the model, which will then send back which action to take based off the specific task. The demo I'm going to show you is Web Voyager agent's been modified to go and extract wallet connect URIs from these different crypto drainer websites out there. Crypto drainers are a pretty prominent scam in the crypto world. Basically, they try to get unwitting users to go to the site with promises of mass rewards for the crypto environment. Try to get them to connect their wallets, and in 1 or 2 clicks, their wallets will be completely drained. So I wanted to create an agent that will automatically go to these drainer sites, download the wallet connect URI, which can be used to extract the malicious wallets from those, which can then be fed into like CTI feeds, such as like chain abuse, which users can then go to and check see whether or not their wallets are malicious that they're transacting with. So there's kind of the agent in action. You get a very simple task like go to this website and copy the wallet connect URI to the clipboard, and it'll pull up the website for you. I just supply it the domain, and it's going to navigate that website strictly through computer vision. It's not using any HTML or CSS selectors. It's strictly using that set of marks prompting, kind of navigate through the website and try to complete that task. You see here it pulls up the wallet connect URI. Hit the copy to clipboard button, download the URI, and then pass that off to another program to then extract the malicious wallet from that URI. So a few takeaways. Agentic systems are highly versatile. Pretty much they're going to be limited by your imagination. There's a lot of things you can do with them. The more data and tools you have, the better. They're only as good as the tools that you supply it. The more data they have to complete their tasks, the more likely they are to do that. They help optimize the models and innate reasoning abilities they can compound on those reasoning abilities depending on which like prompting strategies you use. And that's all I have. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Zara and Ryan. I hope you're willing to answer questions.
Absolutely.
You can ask them as well.
Yeah.
Questions? Yes, wait for the mic. Okay, I'll come up to you.
Yeah, have you tried any of the different sort of agent frameworks against any evaluations, like giving them a OSINT CTF challenge to see how well you're doing against a known standard?
I have not personally done that myself.
Yeah, I haven't either, but I will now.
I believe there is research that's been gone to that, though, trying to evaluate how well these agents perform against certain security tasks.
I know there's also the hot take of all the POC work of like using the agents to make POCs, and then it's debated on how much they're memorizing the published POC. But I know a lot of people are doing that too, with mixed results.
Hi there. A couple of questions. First one, which models are you using in the back end of the agents?
So we use kind of a mixture of models. I think for most of the demos here, we used GPT-4o. We've also used some of the open source models on Grok, which we quite like, Llama, Mixtral, Gemma, things of those nature as well.
Cool. Anything local? Do you run any of it as local?
We have in some cases. So like Mixtral and Llama were the ones we tried. Usually we found RAG does good enough to not do fine tuning. But there's a couple cases like understanding some of the like fraud jargon. That's like a translation problem where we fine tune. But oddly enough, doing like RAG or like putting context in the prompt seems to do pretty well with the public models.
And any of the processes have verification loops in them as well?
Yeah, that's always a challenge, verification, trying to ascertain where the information came from. But there are some certain strategies to try to mitigate the hallucinations. Two that I've used in the past have been the chain poll. There's a paper out there which uses like a mixture of LLMs to determine whether or not the output was grounded in the actual context. Another one I've used in the past has been actually telling the LLMs to spit out the information from which the generated text came from, then doing a fuzzy match off that generated that text to actually determine whether or not it was actually in the context or not.
One thought to add there is it's not real explainability. There's talk earlier. There was an awesome talk on explainability, but we do a lot of kind of like using the source as truth of like what information are you pulling it from, using semantic search to like grab something, produce an answer, then verify it against that data. So that's some of the verification tricks, but it's not true explainable stuff.
Cool. Any more questions? Oh, yeah.
And so you mentioned you use like GPT-4, for example. How do you deal with the ethics of certain models and what data they've been trained on that side of things?
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, I both feel strongly on that, and then also because it is like to your point, a lot of the models are trained on like Reddit, Twitter. Sometimes there's worse, like Stable Diffusion was trained on CSAM data, and so it is like a kind of an inherent like they're biased. Like we trained them on the road rage version of the internet, and then are confused why they like when they do crazy things. So I think it's something that we try as much as we can to like mitigate. I think we haven't found perfect solutions to avoid some of those questions, but we do like as much as we can try to like test different corpuses of data, see how it performs on like different languages, try to measure. And so right now we're trying to mitigate that, but we don't have a perfect solution.
Do we have more questions?
What's the reliability and accuracy of like the GPT report if I were to use it for IOC enrichment, especially for threat actors that are very new and have generic names? So there would be a lot of false positives when they're building the reports.
Yeah, it is always a challenge trying to get any disambiguation. If you have AP41, for example, and somebody else goes by name XYZ, trying to group all of those together into a single actual true threat actor is challenging. You can do some evaluation to a certain degree to try to make sure that the data that you're pulling from is actually relevant to the initial query, but it is a challenge to always make sure that the outputs are relevant to the initial query. I'm trying to think of a specific technique, but
yeah, I'm trying to I think a ballpark is maybe I don't know, 99. Like very rarely you see an issue. I think one of our this is not real mitigation, but a business mitigation or practical mitigation is we try to use it as fancy Google search. So we'll cite the source where it came from, and so we're trying to use it as a faster way for someone to get the result, and then tell the person to now go click the link and look at the source and do more verification. And so that helps with some of the the hallucinations and stuff like that. But yeah, it's honestly something we're always trying to push better.
Thank you for your talk. I just wanted to ask, where can a beginner search for, resources and courses and stuff on OSINT? Where can they learn from?
Yeah, that's let me think about it. I'll kind of follow up depending, honestly, I'll just chat to you after. But I think there's some OSINT exchange, Bellingcat, depending on the type of OSINT you like. Bellingcat is really good. If you like fraud Telegram, like I do, Eric Huber or David Memon, who does a lot of check fraud, are on LinkedIn. They post a lot there. Also Reddit, I think r/OSINT is quite good on just places to start. They even kind of link to some of the dark web stuff depending on how dark you want to go. But I also think it's a fun one. I feel with the OSINT is you can kind of just give yourself any challenge of who is this Instagram person who just messaged me, and just kind of hunting is honestly the fun way for me to get started.
I have a few for y'all as well. There's 2 Substacks I really like. Open Source Intelligence Newsletter is a good one. And then Mimetic Warfare is another one that I really enjoy. And then also there's a podcast called NeedleStack. It has different open source intelligence researchers on every other week. It's a really good resource.
So you've called out hallucinations as being a big problem. Do you build an additional verification model afterwards? And do you catch most or all of them, or have you also got hallucinations in the second one and some of them just get through? And do you build that completely differently?
I don't know if it was I think one thing we found with that is, so for example, if you ask we used to do a lot of supply chain intelligence, and so you can ask a very generic question to an LLM what is the effect of a plane that fell out of the sky? What is the effect on the coal supply chain? And it'll be the effect is very large because a lot of coal is transported from India to the US via planes. And you're wait, that doesn't make any sense. And so a lot of times when you give it very open-ended questions, it is horrible. But if you do very categorical questions, extract the IOC looking things from this post, or categorize this as a fraud method or not a fraud method, or a offer of a stolen account. When you give it these more binary questions, it's a little bit better, and you kind of limit the space of the craziness. And then also it gives you a place to look of we're surfacing, we think this is relevant because it looks like a fraud method, or we've extracted this based on the original text. But some of those techniques are kind of better for some of the verification stages of are you sure this IOC is in the text, or that kind of thing.
Thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it. My question is, have you looked at trying to turn the tool into a specialized tool for instant response platforms, using dark web data specifically for turning it into a specialization tool?
I don't think so, but we'd love to talk to you about that, though.
Yeah. we do fraud intelligence for our day job. So we do some of that of fancy alerting, but I would love to know more about what you're thinking.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, since, what's the legality of someone who's, looking to get intelligence data from a place like the dark web? Obviously, on forums, that sort of thing. Is there, could you be in trouble for doing something like that, doing your investigations there?
There are a lot of legal, we spend a lot on lawyers. I think some of the hurdles are like, first of all, if you're ever purchasing something, that's like one gotcha is like you have to make sure you're not purchasing something from a sanctioned entity. Is it a small amount? Like if you're spending $5 to some fraud person, it's like okay, but if you're like doing anything that's like proportional to like you could be funding their crime, that's a gotcha. Another big thing is images, and so like I guess downloading stuff in general is scary from the securities perspective, but also like if you find anything abusive, there's a lot of requirements on reporting. And then there's also like the scraping stuff, although that's like a little bit, I think right now it's like a little bit more like if you're collecting from illicit spaces with like a reason, it's a bit more clear, but it is something where there's a lot of lawyer questions for sure.
Hi, thank you for the talk. Regarding the ethical side of the agents, and before you talk like, oh, who's this person from Instagram? Let me search for it and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, if I try to do some OSINT by myself, I may be not able to access some information that may be, because let's say a assume on Facebook, you have your privacy setting up, I cannot see anything about you. Does your system text different tools is able to still gather some information about you that I wouldn't be able to do? In that case, how do you consider protect privacy of the person, the other person?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was looking at your thoughts here, but I think there's two things I think we think about here is like one, like what there's a general question of like how sure are you that this person or thing is involved in crime, and so like that is like one thing, but that's a very fuzzy thing because like sometimes it's really clear like someone's like I'm hiring someone to go brick or like go attack someone else, and you're like okay great, like yeah you seem very sketchy, but then other times it's a lot more of a fuzzy boundary, and I kind of completely agree with you of like tracking individuals for like normal things is super creepy and we don't want to do it, but I think in between, so one of the things that we think about is it data that people have posted, like did you intentionally put it out into the world or is it something that's hidden? So like a difference is like if you post on Twitter it's available versus something if it's like hidden location data from your dating app, that's like really, you obviously probably are not trying to put that out in the world. So that's like one of the ways we started to draw the lines. But honestly, for us, still, it's, it's kind of early and we try to do a case by case of like, making sure we're not going to the dark side there.
We have time for just one last question. We're done. Zara, Ryan, thank you so much. That was great. Round of applause.